No, it's on. Okay. So you had a test a couple weeks ago on the Anglo-Saxon period. And when you turn in your folders before you leave for your break, I want you to return that with the multiple choice tests because I want to keep your tests separately. So some of the questions that I asked you on the Anglo-Saxon test, I'm going to ask you on this test too. But this test is going to take you to page 50. So there will be about half of it will be medieval period, ballads, Chaucer, and as far as we have gotten in the Canterbury characters. So what I'd like to do is read you one more character and then give you, 15 so minutes break, okay? So there's some dates in it. So these are the dates you need to know when both of these ages began and ended. So Anglo-Saxon is 449. That's after the Romans left and when the Angles and Saxons and Jutes started coming. And it goes to 1066. So 1066 is the last year of the Anglo-Saxon and the first year of the medieval period. And the crisis that changed the ages was the Battle of Hastings. So the Battle of Hastings is when William the Conqueror comes from France and takes over England. And they start setting up a more French culture, French language, and rule in England until 1485, which is the end of the medieval period. And the end of the medieval period is when the two houses of Lancaster and York at the end of the War of Roses started a new dynasty, the dynasty of Tudor, which is what Henry VIII and Elizabeth are from. So not too many dates, but you do need to know those dates. You need to know who St. Augustine is. And let me tell you, when I grade these, every question's worth 2 points. So if you put in 1597, Pope Gregory sent missionary Augustine to bring Christianity to England, then you get both points. If you just say first Christian, you could put the first Archbishop of Canterbury, but as you answer them, ask yourself, are there 3 facts I can include? Because if you have 3, you're sure to get full credit. Do you have a question, Allison?
So the tests, we don't fasten them?
No, the tests are supposed to be turned back with your manila folder.
Okay.
Yeah.
What else is going in this manila folder?
Yeah, that folder has your multiple choice and your Anglo-Saxon test. Everything else goes in your
Okay.
colored folder. Yeah. It's just because until everyone takes the test, I don't want to send them home with you. Okay. So I ask you about Bede and Caedmon, and some of you are getting it mixed up. Bede is the monk who wrote the book, the ecclesiastical histories of the English people. Caedmon is the farmer who was visited in a dream and received the gift of turning Bible verses into songs. Yes. Yes, you can lower it a little bit. Go ahead. There's a couple questions about literary words like alliteration. So you remember alliteration is when the first letter of several words is the same consonants, like true is the tale that I tell of my travels. You need to know what a kenning is. And a kenning is a phrase that means something else, like the whale road could be the ocean. You need to know what an epic poem is. And for epic poem, be sure you put several things that make a poem epic. It has to be long, it has to have lofty language, it has to have a conflict between good and evil, it needs some historical significance. Like there's several things that makes a poem epic rather than just a long poem. In Beowulf, we get our first introduction to what the Anglo-Saxons admired in masculinity. And this is one of the things we kind of watch as we go through the English literature course is how masculinity is redefined in different ages and also how romantic love is redefined. It's just interesting to see how history and literature affect these cultural ideas. So I want you to know what was an admired hero during the Anglo-Saxon period, and you can use Beowulf as an example. When we get into King Arthur and knighthood and chivalry, then we're going to see how that changes a little bit. You need to know the alphabet of this time was called runic, and runic is an alphabet in which you use metal wedges to write, so they have no curves to them. Know what languages influenced Old English. This is page 2324. We've referred to it quite a few times, so be sure you know it's Celtic, Germanic, Old Norse, Latin. Okay, and then what language influences medieval or Middle English? French, Norman French. That's how it changes in the next age. You need to know what feudalism is. There's a real cool little video. I'll try to send you a link to it because it explains it super well. You need to know the story of Thomas Becket's murder, that he had been the king's friend. The king made him archbishop, planning to use him to help control the church. But then when he wouldn't submit, when he started doing things he felt God wanted him to do, he had him murdered in the cathedral. And he became the first saint, and his cathedral became a holy place like the Basilica of Guadalupe, where pilgrims would
They
go.
killed him inside the cathedral?
Excuse me?
Like they killed him inside?
Yeah, they went in during Mass and stabbed him right at the steps of the altar. Yeah, really ghastly, horrible story. On page, I think it's 8, it talks about different English theater or drama, and I want you to know the 2 types. So a miracle play is a play about a Bible story. A morality play is an allegory, or it's symbolic. The main character's name might be Everyman, and his girlfriend might be Temptation. You know, very symbolic. Know what the ballads are about, what makes a song a ballad, and what subjects they cover. Understand that out of the Crusades came codes of conduct for knights called codes of chivalry, and stories about knights are called romance literature. Be sure you understand how those words are used. Know what the 100-Year War is and the War of Roses. What are they fighting about? We will study King Arthur more when we finish the Canterbury characters, but you should have a little introduction in this section because King Arthur actually lived in about 500. So he was a Celtic warlord, probably fighting against the Jutes and Saxons. But the stories about him are written during the medieval period, so they change it and make him more of a crusader than a warlord. You need to know the story of how he was revealed to be king, that Merlin magically put a sword into a stone. Actually, it was like under an anvil, which is a piece of equipment used by people who make shoe horses and metals, works with metals. But no, but you do need to know that he had to pull the sword out of the stone. You know, that was the way to prove his royal blood. Chaucer, super important. Know what he did, why he's so famous. Understand why the Canterbury characters are so important, why they are considered, you know, next to Shakespeare, the greatest literature from the English history. And then I'm asking you a few questions about different characters. For example, maybe the knight and his son, like how they represent the Anglo-Saxon period and then the medieval period. More the knight, and then the son is more like the coming Renaissance. Renaissance and Elizabethan age mean the same thing, and that's the age we start after this one. So, yeah, so I suggest you kind of thumb through it, take a little bit of time and read the explanations, like the page on ballads. It has several facts worth knowing. Before the Canterbury Tales on page 42, the little introduction to the Canterbury Tales will give you some insight. And you'll have the whole class hour to do it. So I'm hoping you can give me good, thorough answers